Welcome back to the FreeCodeCamp podcast. I'm Quincy Larson, teacher and founder of freeCodeCamp.org. Each week we're bringing you insight from developers, founders, and ambitious people getting into tech. This week we're talking with Kass Moreno, the CSS artist herself. Kass is a senior front-end developer, and she started learning to code at age 28 and has since built a reputation as one of the most adept CSS artists, building entire visuals, entire pieces from HTML and CSS. Kass, welcome to the FreeCodeCamp podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here, and we're going to look at some of your art in just a moment and learn about it. But first, I want to thank the 8,502 people who support FreeCodeCamp each month through donations to our charity. So if you want to join them and help make programming like this possible, please go to freeCodeCamp.org/donate and start supporting us today. Thanks. Kass, I'm so excited. I've been a long time admirer of your work. I've just seen it around on Twitter, other places people have been sharing it, and I'm so excited to finally talk with you and learn about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. It's crazy that people even know that the art is out there and everything. So just to hear that is amazing, honestly. It makes my day every time anyone says they like CSS art.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're going to be checking out some of the art here on the video version. For people who are listening to the audio version of this podcast, no worries. We're going to verbally describe everything, and I've got a show note link. It's cssartist.com. You can check out all of Kass's work there. So, Kass, why don't you share your screen, and we can just dive in and check out some of your art, and you can talk about how you made it.
Yeah, awesome. Let's do it. Okay.
All right, and here we are on cssartist.com. And Kass, yeah, go ahead and talk us through what you're doing.
Okay, yeah. So this is my portfolio website. I wanted to make sure that it was a little bit weird, a little bit different. So I have most of my CSS art on here, but the one that I'm most proud of, I think is super cool, is the I made this scrolling animation for the photorealistic Polaroid drawing that I made using CSS and HTML. So it's basically, as you scroll, you see how the drawing is getting built. So you see the two boxes, then you more shading comes in, you see flash, the lens. So you kind of get to see the progression of it. That's probably my favorite CSS art ever.
Yeah. And it's so cool. If you scroll down just so we can see the finished product, the actual gloss to it, the sheen. I mean, it looks so delicious, for lack of a better word. It looks like almost like a cake matte finish, like that shininess. And then of course the iconic Polaroid slot where you pull your photo out after you've taken the photo. Everything looks so photorealistic, like the glare on the lens, for example, the glass that covers that aperture that takes the photo. Yeah, everything. And the viewfinder, I mean, it's so photorealistic and so cool. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. The it's those little details that you have to spend so much time looking at, and they seem so insignificant at first until you take a step back and look at the whole thing. You're like, okay, no, that was definitely worth it to do.
Yeah. Let's take a look at some of your other work too. So if you scroll down on her page, you just get this amazing grid of photorealistic CSS art. For example, maybe we could click on that crayon box.
Yeah, this is one of the first ones that I did, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a single div.
Wow.
So the HTML is just div, and everything inside is just backgrounds.
Is it absolutely positioned, or how do you do that?
Yeah, this one's just absolutely positioned with a single background, and it's just stacked linear gradients.
Yeah, and it looks like a photorealistic Crayola box without the Crayola logo. It's got those iconic kind of green and yellow box, and the shadow underneath it, and like the some of the colors have like this matte finish to them. Some are a little bit shiny. So beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this one was, I think, one of the first ones that I really did. As soon as you learn how to stack the gradients with a single div, like you're off to the races.
Yeah. Let's take a look at that calculator.
Okay, yeah, this one was probably the hardest one I've ever done. Easily, probably. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The buttons. The buttons. Oh my gosh, those took forever.
Yeah, they just have this concaveness, like this concavity, whatever the word is. Like you can almost feel like your fingertip kind of like resting on top of it, and like the ergonomicness of it, and then just pressing it in and feeling that tactile click. You can imagine like you're just working really fast, like kind of a 10 key type thing. So cool. And it's got kind of that iconic like orange and gray look. Orange and gray, I don't know what it is about them. Like the NES Zapper gun like has that, like at least in the US it had that orange and gray look. So cool looking.
Yeah, and yeah, it gets you like nostalgic.
Oh yeah, that off-white casing that they used to always put electronics on in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. And there's a ton of CSS here. How many lines of CSS is this?
This one is, oh, it's still loading. 1,143 lines.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. And it was the buttons. The buttons, they look like you could just copy and paste them, but they each need to have their own separate like kind of shading and gradients on it. Otherwise it just didn't look right. So yeah, that took forever, and that's pretty much what all of the CSS is.
I mean, like that attention to detail, thinking like, even though this button is only like, 5 millimeters to the right of this one, it's going to be hit by the light slightly differently, right?
Yeah.
Like the shadows
so you
should
need
look
a little
slightly
bit
longer.
of less. Yeah.
That's
So if
amazing.
you look from the buttons, like they're just slightly different, not too different, just slightly different.
Amazing. And that Game Boy, let's check out that Game Boy. So nice. This is like one of the second generation Game Boys, I think, because it's like a little bit less boxy.
Yeah. This one, oh my gosh, I loved Game Boy. I used to play like Pokemon all the time, especially like on trips and stuff. So this one was super fun to do. I loved doing the shading inside of the screen, so it looks like it's kind of inset how the Game Boys actually look. I don't know why. I thought that was so cool looking, and the shading on the arrows and the buttons, love that too. It's super fun to do.
Amazing. Again, anybody listening to the audio version, CSSartist.com. You can check all these out. These are so cool. All right. Well, let's talk about the woman behind the art, Kass Moreno. Like, let's dive into how you got to this level with your CSS skills. And maybe what I like to do is I like to start at the very beginning, as far back as we can go. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your early days. I understand that you were born in Mexico and that you moved to the U.S. when you were 6.
Yeah. Well, I was born in the U.S., but I lived in Mexico until I was 6, and then I moved back to the U.S. to San Antonio, Texas, because my parents started a business. So from there, English became my main language, and so I ended up just growing up here. Went to high school. I was not a great high school student. Skipped a lot, all of that good stuff, all of the fun stuff. But at the end, I decided that I wanted to go to school for architecture.
Yes.
So, I did that for 3 whole years, and it was so intense. Like, I remember the first day in class, like, they sit you down in studio, and you get there, and you're like, super excited to be here, and the teacher's like, I hope you don't have a boyfriend, and I hope you don't have another job, because this is going to be your life from now on. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Yeah. So I did that for 3 years until I was like, it was fun. It was, it taught me a lot. Like, that school was a lot. It was, wow, sorry. It really pushed a lot of like hands-on work instead of computer work for architecture. So like at the beginning, we did a lot of like art projects, learning like art theory and all of that, photorealistic drawings and stuff, which I love. But the thought of having to do that and like doing architecture for the rest of my life was, it didn't sound like something I
Yeah.
wanted to do. So yeah, it's a difficult decision, but year 3, almost done, I decided that this was not for me, like at all. I
What did you
couldn't, and I
do?
wasn't.
Like, can you remember what that moment of revelation? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a gradual sinking feeling, but like when you finally decided, no, I'm really not gonna do this. I'm not gonna spend my life being an architect. Like, what did you do at that point?
Yeah, it was gradual. You start getting less excited to go to class. You start getting less excited to learn. Like you don't really want to do the projects anymore. And it finally just kind of clicked one day that like this, my grades were falling. It was showing everywhere that I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I finally was just like, okay, no, like I need to pivot. It's probably not the best idea. I may be making the
Yeah.
wrong choice, but I feel it like in my heart that like this isn't what I'm going to do forever. This
So
isn't
okay,
gonna make me happy.
you make that decision. What do you do?
Call my mom.
All right.
Call my mom and tell her, and try to be real nice about it because she's paying for school and everything. And thankfully, she's very kind, and she said, that's fine. You have to do something though, so like, figure something out. Get a job at least. Like, we'll go from there. So yeah, thankfully, like my mom was super cool about it, and she let me just like no harm, no foul. Like it happens. Just be happy. So I did. I ended up getting a job at Sprint. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I
Yeah.
just started working, which is where I also found out I really didn't want to be a salesperson.
Yeah, and Sprint
Because
is
yeah.
for anybody outside the U.S. Sprint is a
Oh, yeah.
like cell phone carrier. It's like one of the
Or they
big
were.
ones. They were. Did they?
They
what
were.
happened?
They got bought by T-Mobile.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, you used to like. Were they the ones with like so quiet, like you can hear a pin drop? Was that their commercial?
No, I'm not sure, actually.
But
I
there
don't
was like
remember.
there were like some really interesting like 1980s, 1990s. Like, nothing
Yeah.
was more 80s than cell phone carrier commercial, or 90s, I guess, because cell phones were
Yeah.
pretty
Can you hear me
ubiquitous
now?
in the 90s. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they had like the
they're a
big
big
army.
deal.
Can you hear me now? I'm walking around like the entire U.S. to check the coverage. Yeah. So you decided you didn't want to do sales, like, but you spent like 2 years working in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was not good at it. I was probably the worst salesperson. It's really hard for me to try to tell someone that they need this like $40 charger when you don't really need the $40 charger. Let's be real. So no, I'm not a salesperson at all. Never put me in any sales position because I'm just gonna agree with the customer on everything and be like, nah, you don't really need it.
Yeah. Wow. You're too empathetic. You're too nice to be a salesperson, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's my problem. I'm too nice.
So, we jumped straight to college, but I do want to talk a little bit about your early days, because you said you were born in San Antonio?
I was born in Laredo.
Laredo. Okay. That's here in Texas too. Sorry, I'm like
Yeah.
not a native
No,
Texan. I
you're
don't
okay.
know
Yeah,
every
that's
city.
Texas. So it was kind of funny because I was born in Laredo, but I lived in Nuevo Laredo, which is Mexico. And so I went to school in the U.S. too, though. So I would like drive across the border every day for elementary, or for like kinder in elementary school. So that was interesting. But yeah, I did that until I was 6, and then we moved to the U.S.
Okay. Yeah. So you already had some English skills, and you told me earlier before we started recording, like your sister was really big on English, and she was an inspiration for you to really like bulk up on your English skills.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because actually, most of the people in my school just spoke Spanish, even though it was in the U.S. It was predominantly just Spanish and Mexican people. So we didn't really speak any English, but my sister was learning it, and I remember she was like kind of talking it with her friends and everything, and I'm like, I want to talk that, like I want to speak English too, like what? And so that's what got me to learn, just being like that annoying little sister of like, I want to do what you're doing.
Yeah. So obviously that worked out really well for you, because I mean you sound like a native speaker. Of course, starting early. Well, what about the rest of you? And so you have an older sister, and you have a brother as well.
Yeah, yeah. I have an older sister. I have a younger brother, so I'm the middle child, and then I have 2 half sisters. They're both in college right now.
Okay, cool. And what did your brother and sister like ultimately decide to do? I'm just curious while we're talking about them. Like, yeah, well, are they here in
Oh,
Texas still?
yeah, yeah. So my brother went to UT.
Mm-hmm.
Then he
University of
moved back
Texas.
home. Yeah, University of Texas. He studied business there, and so now he's working in my parents' business, and so is my sister. So it's like a whole family business, and they're all working except for me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
And
so
so I'm really excited to talk about your relationship with your mom. I know that sounds weird to say, but like my understanding is she was absolutely vital to helping you like launch your career as a software developer. Maybe you
yeah,
could talk about like how that came about.
yeah. So I mean, one thing to know, my mom is a saint. Okay, like she let me kind of flail around and try to figure out what I want to do with my life, which is not something that a lot of people get a chance to do. Like they don't, she's very patient with me. Um, but yeah, it was towards the end of my non-successful tenure at Sprint that she was like, "Hey, I need a website for the business. I need a new one because theirs was super old." She's like, "You're not doing anything, right? So like, why don't you try to figure this out?" And she was right. I wasn't. So I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that actually sounds like something fun, like something I could just dive into." And from there, yeah, I started reading about WordPress because that's what her site was on. And then I started like, okay, so then I need a theme. Okay, what's the most popular theme? Cool. So how do I change this header? Like, and then it just snowballed into like, oh, okay, so I should probably like look at this course and then like, oh, free code camp and then like, oh, Udemy. And it just never ended. And yeah, it was just quite the beginning, right? It just snowballs once you start, you just keep getting more curious about everything else.
Yeah, and maybe you can talk about like that process of building that project. WordPress, of course, being this giant ecosystem of plugins and templates and things like that. Like, how did you start out? What was the first? Because this is really cool. It's like project oriented learning. You already have a stakeholder, right? Your mom, and
Yeah.
of course, nobody wants to disappoint their mom. So you're probably working really hard to get this done well.
Yeah, yeah. After dropping out of college and leaving Sprint, I definitely needed this to be like a thing that she's like, oh, thank you. Like, I wanted to help her at this point because she's helped me
Yeah,
so much. So, yeah, I spent a lot of time on this trying to make sure it's perfect. Like, I found the, the perfect theme and then I joined the theme groups, but that wasn't enough because, like, what if I want to change something very specifically and, like, look at all of these other cool sites? I want to do what they do. Like, so I started taking CSS courses, and then I'm like, oh, but if I want to do this, you need to learn JavaScript. What's that? Oh my gosh, that looks really difficult. And so, yeah, you just kind of start with that. And so the process was just, yeah, iterations and iterations of just getting better. And like, I remember just being at home at night next to my, well, now husband, and just being like, look, babe, I changed the header to this website. Like the color was black and now it's red. Like I was so excited. And he was like, there, just like, yeah, that's so cool. And so then I would show my mom, like, and so, yeah, we just kept iterating where I would like, compare their websites, see what they do. Like, what is my mom trying to do? Like, it was a lot of learning. Like you said, project oriented learning is incredible because you're not like lost. You have like a clear set of things that you need to get done and you just jump right in.
yeah. And so you eventually build this website for your mom. Is it still live today? Is it a WordPress?
No, no, yeah, that was a while ago. They already took that one down.
Okay, but I mean, nothing lasts forever in
Yeah,
on the web. As
yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg says, like when you can find like ancient ruins of like past civilizations, but on the web, nothing is left. It's just like
Yeah.
it's as though nothing were even there. Sorry, it's kind of like a menacing Mark Zuckerberg
No,
quote.
no, that's true though. Like even like trying to show clients past work is like, I can't really show this to you because it's not live anymore, but I promise it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's on the Internet Archive somewhere.
Yeah.
So you build this site, and like, what happens next? Like, does that serve as a a win that like helps push you to continue to learn?
It serves the win that I needed, the win that I really, really needed, because I didn't know how bad it, like, I didn't realize how bad I was feeling about myself, because I'm like, no architecture, no sales, like, what am I doing? Everyone around me was, all my friends were doing really, really great things, and I'm just sitting here. So that was my win.
Yeah, and you're like 28 years old at this point, approximately, right?
Yeah.
So just to put that in perspective, like, you probably have lots of friends who went to architecture school who are now working at like big contractors or developers or something, like, right?
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of your peer group is like way beyond where you were at that time.
Yep.
And I hope that doesn't sound insensitive for me to say that, because I was
no, not at all.
Like, to some extent, learning to code at age 31, right? So, but here you are in a completely different field, like getting things done, and this has to be like a huge win in terms of like motivation and like self-perception. Like, I can actually get things done, right?
Yeah. It was. I remember the feeling. It was one of the first times in a long time that I felt like I wanted to do something, and I actually did it. Like, and it was hard, and I didn't know how to do it at first, but I did it. Like, it really motivates you to be like, anything that comes your way now, like, I could probably figure it out. If I could figure that out from nothing.
Yeah. So what do you do next?
Okay, so next, so that was like her actual like front end part of the website. She needed something that kept like inventory and stuff. And like it's been a while, but you had to, upload prices somewhere and then like view the prices. So like basically just like a REST app. So I went and I started learning like full stack. That was interesting and fun. It was doing that by yourself and being like an introvert is really hard, because I didn't want to reach out to anyone. I didn't want to ask anyone any questions. Like, I don't know any web developers. Like, what? So I really, for the longest time, I just kind of kept to myself. I remember one problem took me like a week to figure out, because I refused to like ask anyone, or like, I think I asked something on Stack Overflow once and I got downvoted immediately. So like, just crazy. So I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. So, I created this little app that it's super simple, but it allows them to upload some pricing and then like view the pricing later and then add their products and whatnot. So that is not up anymore either, but it was a great learning experience. And my mom was actually proud of me.
Yeah. Well, even though your mom was pretty proud of you, like I know you've had to endure a lot of financial hardship during this process, because I mean, you're like a university dropout. You left your job at Sprint, and maybe your mom was compensating you in some way, but like, what were you doing? Were you like living with your family at this point, or how were you getting by?
So I was just living with my boyfriend, and I was not really getting by too well because I didn't actually have a job. I was just helping my mom with this, but she wasn't really paying me too much. She was just helping me here and there, but it wasn't like an actual job that paid you a lot. Like I think I was, she'd give me like $300 a week or something, which again added to my feeling of just like, what am I doing here? Like, what is going on? I was so broke living with my boyfriend. Like, he had a part-time job. I felt almost lost, but like really excited too. Just like, maybe I could learn to do this. Maybe I can actually like become a developer. But yeah, it was very difficult for a while. I remember my car was so old at the time, like, and rusty. I woke up one day, I went outside to my car and I had a ticket because they said it was like no abandoned cars on the street. And it wasn't abandoned, it just looked old because I just didn't have any money to get another one. But like, oh my gosh, like that was the moment where I just like freaked out. I was like, I can't even pay a $40 ticket because my car looks old. Like, what am I doing? So that was like, I don't even want to say low point because it wasn't, because I was also really excited about like web dev, but I was pretty low. Like, something needs to happen like right now. I need to figure something out. Yeah. This is not sustainable. Like, and I need a new car because the AC in mine did not work, and Texas is not forgiving. Yeah. When it comes to that. In the
summer. Yeah. Mm-mm. So, what did you do? Like, did your financial hardship kind of like apply additional pressure? Did it help you kind of get over some of your introversion, start asking people for help? How did you meet other developers? What did you do from there?
Okay, yeah. So that definitely, not even that helped me get over my introversion. Like I was still dead set on I am not contacting anyone, which for anyone listening, by the way, just reach out. Like it's so much easier. And I love it when people reach out and I love talking to people and I love having conversations with developers that have questions like, I don't know why I didn't do it. Just do it. But yeah, that definitely was just like I needed to do something. So I started applying. Like I thought maybe I'm ready. Like maybe I can apply and get like an actual coding job, like a professional job. That was that was an experience. Your
Yeah.
first trying to apply to your first professional job as a developer, as a self-taught developer. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. As an
Yeah.
introverted self-taught developer who's also very desperate for something, anything was crazy. I went through like 3 or 4 interviews at different companies, like didn't even pass the first screening. Um, and I don't even know how this happened, honestly. Like I one day late at night, it was like 12 o'clock at night. I was like 3 glasses of wine in, playing video games. And I looked at LinkedIn and there was this one post like for a job. It wasn't even web developer, it was web content administrator. And I was like, that sounds great. Like it's like kind of webby, and I know kind of webby. Like, so I applied and 10 minutes later, the recruiter responded like, oh, this is great. Like, let's talk tomorrow. And that was like the first time that I was like, I put my glass down and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, maybe. So then the next day I talked to the recruiter. She was wonderful, like so incredibly kind and just passed me on to the manager. And somehow like she gave me this, I remember the take home was the PSD file and I had to code it. And I was so scared of like asking questions or anything. I remember like, can I use a framework? Can I use Bootstrap? Like I was just thinking all of these things, but I didn't want to ask because I don't ask questions, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just coded it, CSS, whatever, but I got it. She called me and gave me the job, and I'm still friends with that manager to this day. Like we're gonna have a call next week, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, they gave me a shot. They took a chance on me and were like, "You don't have any experience, really, but like, yeah, it was
I mean, if you can do the work, you can do the work, right?
that was the win that I needed. Like that right there, that job, like it was everything, right? Like the pay was awful, but this large mortgage company like allowed me to like go kind of nuts too, right? Like they had like contest sites which were super fun. Like, we want to do a cool like lottery. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, you want to do like a lottery?" I'm like, "Okay, well, what if you get like realistic looking lottery balls? And then what if you have like a screen where they, flip and then the lottery number comes out? Then what if you drop it down this like realistic looking little tube and then they like drop down and then confetti comes out and all this really cool stuff?" And they were like, "Yeah, if you can do it, just do it." And I couldn't, but I figured it out. Like it was all those like cool ideas that you just need
Yeah.
someone to be like, "Yeah, go nuts" when you get excited about something. And then that's where you learn, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's cool, first of all, that you're like basically making all this work for yourself. A lot of people who are lazy might just be like, oh, sure, good enough. But you're like, no, it could do, you see the potential for what this project could be. And you're like, let's go all the way with this project.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, it's a forgettable project. Like it was just for that year, but it was super fun to do. There was another one where they had like a Halloween contest. And I thought, what if we make this look old school? And so I had like an old school looking TV that I put like a screen over so it looks like we're on the screen. And then I made little CSS Polaroids and like did a cute little, I don't know. It's so much fun to just do like weird, cute little things that people are just like, "Oh, that's creative. That's weird."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what is it like settling in? Because you mentioned you're like hardcore introvert, like afraid to ask people questions, willing to toil for an entire week on a problem rather than just asking for help. Like, did you have to report to an office? Like who were you working with?
Yeah, so I actually worked at an office, and the manager above me, she was who I reported directly to. It was just me, her, and this one other girl that were the developers. Not really developers. There was one other developer, and he was way better than both of us. But pretty much it was just me reporting to my manager, and so she was she's a developer. She was self-taught as well. So yeah, she helped me out a lot. She gave me a bunch of ideas on things to do, and I remember like freaking out. I would have like a bunch of questions. She like basically calmed me down and told me like you can ask questions. Like it's not, or she was very patient with me at first because I freak out very easily as well since I don't want to ask questions like I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, which I need to just ask if I'm doing the right thing. So like it's a lot of patience when you're a manager with the first time like not student with the self-taught
Yeah.
first time job. She was very kind. I got very lucky. Very lucky.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled that it worked out well, and you kind of stayed in that mortgage space. Which let's talk about that for a second, because I think a lot of people envision, oh, I'm going to work at Google or I'm going to work at Microsoft or one of these big prominent tech companies. That's their eventual goal. And what I always tell people is 2/3 of all developer jobs are outside of what we conventionally think of as tech, right? They're working at like an automotive company or a hospital chain or any number of different types of industries, right? Everybody needs developers. Everybody's trying to push things to the software developer or to the software layer. Everybody's trying to figure out ways that they can better reach customers through technology, things like that, right? So,
right.
Yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, like, because you, up until relatively recently, you were working in kind of like the mortgage industry, right?
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, like for just starting out, like I knew that I wasn't ever going to get into like Google or LinkedIn and Netflix, whatever. So I, go for the easier jobs and everything. But even, I don't know. Yeah, like you said, most of the tech jobs are not in those companies. They're in just like what sounds almost like boring companies, but they're great jobs. They're a lot of fun.
Right.
You get to do a lot of things. Like as long as you have a good manager and a good working environment, like you're off to the races. It's great and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Just because it's like an industry that's like really old doesn't mean there's not really exciting work to be done in that field. And a lot of those companies are, the jobs are a lot more stable, and it can be a lot more like better work-life balance and things like that than going to some crazy like Silicon Valley like tech startup where they expect you to work like all day every day and like
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and someone at Google isn't going to let me go nuts on a landing page for a lottery, like for fun.
Yeah.
But you can do that at companies that aren't only like tech.
Yeah.
You can go and just do fun, weird, crazy things at different companies.
And it sounds like you were working on a pretty small team. You said there were just a couple other developers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always tell people like working on a small team gives you the ability to do a lot of everything. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you kind of have to wear a bunch of hats because the team is so small.
Yeah.
And you kind of grow and learn together, which is a great part of being in a small team.
Yeah. So that first couple years of working in tech, like what were some and when I say working in tech, we just established it's a mortgage company, but working as a developer. Sometimes I use working in tech and working as a developer synonymously. But what was that like? Like, were there any like standout moments in your kind of progression as a developer where you felt like you just unlocked some entire new aspect of your brain that you didn't know existed?
Yeah. Like just any kind of like the creativity idea, like the creating the little realistic balls. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, so I could do that. And then I learned Illustrator, and then I could bring that SVG into code and then animate that with JavaScript. Like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even know I could do that. Like that you unlocked. I remember we read about some sort of the accessibility, like the lawsuits and everything that was all starting when I first started there. We started that kind of unlocked everything. So I was like, I didn't know anything about accessibility really. So I started reading more, and then we went back and like made thousands of landing pages that we have for that company, just like accessible.
Yeah.
So that like unlocks something else. Like, oh my gosh, like people, like need people that aren't me that need to like read this. Everyone needs to be able to like learn and read this. So that was great too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, the late 2010s, whatever that decade is called. Like that was really a renaissance for accessibility. And we're still feeling that today. Like there's so many different websites and sub pages and everything that can be gone through and made accessible. And it's like, it's not that much work, and it makes all the difference for so many people. I think something like 15% of people on Earth live with a disability, right? So yeah, it sounds like really important, impactful work. So you were able to like sit down and like, okay, today I'm making these pages accessible. And like, was that a good feeling? Like, were you able to like, what was your mom thinking this entire time? I guess I'm curious because she's seen her daughter go from, college dropout who's like, getting tickets because her car's too old and rusty. And like kind of like living a hand-to-mouth existence, so to speak. And now she's going out there and having such an impact, helping improve these websites. And like what did she ever talk with you about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I tell my mom everything, so she was very excited for me. Like anything cool that I did or something, I send her. I mean, like I even called her when I won like this Call of Duty Warzone game. Like I tell her like everything, right? Like, so yeah, no, she was proud. She's aware. Like, she's like, I didn't even know you can do that. I remember even my sister, she was giving birth and I was in the hospital, like learning with my laptop, like, oh, okay, so I could move this here and this, that, because, giving birth takes forever. So I'm just sitting there in the waiting room. So, and I'm like, look, Mom, I remember showing her like all these like columns I did or something like that. And she's like, that's great, Kass.
Yeah.
But no, she was very excited. She was very, very proud of me. Like very happy.
Yeah.
To just see me like settle down a little bit.
Yeah. And speaking of settling down, if you don't mind me asking, like you recently changed your last name, which is why on your landing page it said Kass Sanchez, but now you're Kass Moreno.
I need to change that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you can talk about that. Congratulations on sounds like your longtime boyfriend.
Yeah, that was great. He's been wonderful. He's supported me through the whole like coding journey. Like he paid off my $40 ticket for me when I was real down in the dumps. It's been great. There's nothing like having a supportive spouse when you're trying to learn and like pivot into something completely different. Like when he met me, I didn't even have a job and I didn't know what I was doing. And he still was just like, yeah, I like her.
Yeah.
So that was great. Like, he likes you for you. So that's great. Then his job got moved to Houston. So I had to move to Houston with him. So I moved to a different part of the mortgage company, to the different office. But that's kind of where everything changed too, because that's when I was like, okay, so maybe, it just, once you move cities, you kind of start like looking at your life and being like, okay, I think I'm like ready, to do something a little bit bigger than what this is. Like I want to move on. And my husband was amazing about everything. Just like, yeah, like you should, like, I think you're great, like as a husband does. But, I think that move, if it weren't for him, and that whole move and everything, I'm not even sure where I would be. Like, yeah, he helped me a lot. And without him, I wouldn't even be a developer.
Yeah. Wow. Well, kudos to him for being so supportive. That's really chill. My wife was extremely supportive when me as like a 31-year-old man, hey, I'm going to stop being a school director. I'm going to learn to code. She was super chill. And
that's awesome.
And she practically, as an American, she had insurance through her company. So I had health insurance coverage, even though I was just, heads down for like 9 months learning the code while I was at the library and stuff. So, that's super chill that he was there to support you. And not just emotionally, but like with your $40 ticket.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about this new awakening when you arrive in Houston. Houston is one of the biggest cities in the United States. It's like the Metroplex, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and the Houston Metroplex. They're like the two biggest parts of Texas, which is the second biggest state right behind California in terms of population. Even though they're both in Texas, they're pretty far away from each other. Like it takes me about 4 hours to drive down to Houston from here. Maybe you could talk about what it was like arriving in this big city. Is this the biggest city you've ever lived in?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So, I mean, we moved to like a really nice little apartment, like in the middle of like the Heights. So it was just like bustling stuff everywhere, like bars, restaurants. Like it was so cool to see all that because we didn't have that before. I'd never like lived in like a really cool part of a city, you know? So it was fun, and it was fun seeing like all these people, like, you like successful people around you. Like it just helps you, like, talk to people like neighbors and stuff, just like seeing what they're doing, how hard they're working. Like it is kind of an awakening. Like just getting taken out of your comfort zone is an awakening no matter what you do, right? Like so it was a huge inspiration that like now that I'm like more comfortable with change, I want to do more. I want to like do a lot more actually.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and I was thinking like, okay, like how do I even improve my code? How do I get better? Like I need to get better. Like I think I got a little bit complacent
Mm-hmm.
at the mortgage company. But that move really helped with that. So I was like, maybe I'll start like 100 days of code. I've seen that like on Twitter where I started a account like 10 years ago and it was just there. And I was like, okay, maybe. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And that's when like we all started working from home. So I had even more time in the day. So I really like, I was like, I'll just do 100 days of code. And I started that and I started posting. I had 5 followers. Like, and so I was just posting. Yes. And then also sending it to my mother. But she wasn't going to join Twitter. So it's just 5 followers and my mom on the side. And yeah, it just like every day I was just striving to just get a little bit better, like a little bit better. Just, it started off with like how to do like a little falling down animation in sequence, like make a word fall down, like the letters like hit each other.
Yeah.
Things like that, like super silly things. Like I got really into loading animations just to learn animations. Like, and the more I posted, the more like I saw people were like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh, other people think that's cool. And so then I got inspired looking at other people's code, and it just, oh my gosh, it gets so exciting once you like finally start talking to other people. Like that opened up everything. Like Twitter, just like, I was like, whoa, like everyone is so talented.
100 days of code, Twitter, like, I mean, you've got 50,000 followers now. So you literally grew your following by 10,000 times in this time, posting about.
Yeah, just posting things that I make that I think are kind of cool. Like, that's it.
Yeah. And that's the secret. Like, there's so much authenticity when I like scroll through your Twitter feed, and it's like you're just being you. You're building, you're using your skills to build things that you think are interesting. Let's talk about like agency life, like working at an agency. So you're no longer at a mortgage company. Now you're working at a kind of like dev consultancy agency, doing work probably for a lot of different companies. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so much fun to work at an agency. Like, I even told my husband recently, like, I don't think I could see myself moving to like another corporate job like that. 'Cause agency, like you get to work on everything. Like, it's not just one project and you're improving it forever or whatever. It's new projects. Like, can you do this? I don't know how, but we'll figure it out. Like, it's so much fun. It's chaotic. Agency life is so chaotic. And it's like you have to wear so many hats because you're not a big corporate company. You're just an agency. So like, oh, you need to figure out how to do reports on Google Analytics. Okay, like, I guess we'll figure this out. Or, oh, you need X, Y, and Z. Like, okay, we're going to figure out how to do that. Or you need like a video platform, So agency life is just really, really fun. Like, if you want to ever level up like crazy, it's going to be, in my opinion, at an agency.
Yeah. And I've heard the same from so many people that work at agencies. Like, you just get to work on so many more projects. If you work at a big company, they might stick you in a department and you just work on that, code base
forever,
for years, but how many different projects are you taking on a year, would you say, if you were to estimate?
Oh my gosh, probably like 15 or so.
15 projects a year that you're touching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like a lot of projects I'm also just like keeping up with and adding to, but like new projects, new things. Yeah. About 15, I'd say.
Yeah. And you're able to work remotely?
Yeah. Yeah. All of my coworkers are in Seattle and I'm the only one in Texas because They said, "Oh, it's the pandemic. We'll hire someone from out of state."
Yeah.
I just met them like a month ago in real life for the first time, so that's exciting.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of tech up in Seattle, and like a lot of, big customers and stuff. So it makes sense that they'd be out there. But that's so cool that you can live in Houston. Of course, being a Texan, growing up here, I used to live in Houston when I was a kid. Actually, I probably left Houston because I'm a bit older than you. I was probably not living in Houston. Obviously not now, but I think I lived there till I was like 6. Or wait, no, I lived there from like age 5 to like age 10, I think. So I lived there for 5 years. Yeah, and that was my kind of Texas upbringing and my first encounter with the humidity and the heat of Houston.
It's insane. Like, you don't think it's going to be that bad, and it's like way worse than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Especially for someone with curly hair.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about lessons you've learned from this, because overcoming to some extent your introversion and being able to get things done on teams, working with clients, of course, learning to code really well, not just front-end development, but like going extremely deep on CSS specifically. That's so cool. What are some observations that you have about your journey that like you think would be like super actionable for someone? Like, what advice would you send back in time to yourself?
Well, yeah, great question. 100%, like, main one is ask for help when you're stuck, because otherwise you're going to spend so much unnecessary time just being stuck when you don't actually have to be. And people are a lot nicer than you think they are.
Yeah.
Anyone needs anything, I'm happy to like help. Always reach out to me. I'm totally here. What else? Let's see. 100 days of code. 100 just consistency pretty much is what it is, right? Like, you can spend like 3 hours learning how to do something, and then you don't touch it again, you're going to forget. Yeah. That was a huge deal for me. That was something that like feels obvious, but I needed to learn like 17 times before I finally got it. So really, it's just the consistency. Sharing your code is important to me. I mean, a lot of people probably don't think it's a good idea. Maybe you don't want to share on social media. Maybe, you're scared to post, but like, everyone, again, is so kind, and it's fun to get feedback. Maybe you learn something you can do better. It's very important to like talk to other developers, just get out of your box a little bit and just learn, and if you think something looks cool, try to figure out how to do it. Try to like deconstruct it, see how they do that. Like, just being curious when you feel yourself getting complacent, like try to like, see that that's like a feeling and that's what you're doing. Like, try to recognize it and try to pivot a little bit from that. But also, don't get burned out, because I've done that so many times that it's like a habit.
Can we talk about that real quick? Because I mean, that like that's the biggest occupational hazard, other than like repetitive stress injury or eye strain, or some people I know have got like vertigo from staring at a screen too much and things like that, which is very debilitating. But like, burnout is very real, and like a lot of people that I've talked to have gone through periods of burnout. When was I guess the first time you started feeling burned out, and what did that feel like?
The first time was when I started posting a lot on social media, that I felt like I should probably keep posting. I should keep making more CSS art. Like, you kind of start getting this mode that you're like, I need to keep learning. I need to keep posting. Like, you kind of start moving into like robotic mode almost. And then I started getting less excited. I started getting more tired. I started dreading opening up social media. Like, that's when I was like, like this, what am I doing? But I'm so stubborn that I just kind of tried to push through it, and then you burn out.
Yeah.
And I actually just came out of a burnout recently too, because when I get an idea in my head, I get so excited. I get just so hyped. I want to do it night and day, like wake up, go to sleep, do it. And then I just burn myself out. So I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'm that I'm a kind of person that like, I'm like a dog with a bone. And then once I finish the bone, I need like a month break of like extracurriculars, and then I can go back.
Yeah. I'm taking so many notes because I feel your description of like, that kind of, you get into production mode where you're like, I've got to ship this, and and probably at the same time, social media is like, you see those numbers climb. there's Jeff Atwood, founder of Stack Overflow, whom I've interviewed on the FreeCodeCamp podcast previously. He has a great saying. He says, the moment you put a number next to somebody's face, that's where like problems happen, because people are going to try to make that number go up. Right? And
it's just like a game.
Yeah. And I mean, you've been so amazing at that game, but at the same time, it can feel like a grind. Like, and it can almost feel like the people that are actually like saying kind things and everything, that kind of gets abstracted away. Like, people are saying nice things, but my number's not going up as fast as it used to, or something like that. Or like, what's wrong? Like, I just worked really hard on this. I published it. Like, have you ever published a new piece of art and just felt like it wasn't as well received as your like previous work?
Oh yeah. And that's when I have to like step back and be like, it's not even about that. Like, it's just that I get so sad that other people aren't as excited as I am about it, but that's okay, because like, I'm not as excited about everything either. It's just like, it stings a little bit. It stings the heart a little bit after like 5 hours of working on something.
Yeah. Like, I've written more than 500 articles for like the FreeCodeCamp publication. And like, there was this one that I spent like 3 days on. I worked so hard on it, and I was like so proud of it. And I published it, and like very few people read it. I mean, it was still like, I feel guilty even saying like, oh, only a few thousand people read this article, but still, it's like you kind of get like acclimated to success, and anything that's not like absolute unadulterated success feels like a step down. And that definitely kind of like made me question, should I really work this hard on a single article if like all of them? But obviously, like looking at your art, it's clear that you spend a great deal of time on these. How do you do it? How do you push forward, meticulously crafting these pieces? Like, is there ever a voice in your head like, people aren't going to like this as much? Do you have like a critical voice in your head ever?
No, not when I started. When I started, like I said, dog with the bone. I am in it, and I'm going to finish this because I'm going to finish this. I don't care if this looks weird or hard. Like, I'm going to finish this. And then it's not until after that I get like a little hangover, like, what did I just do? Or is anyone even going to like this?
Yeah.
Why did I just spend 8 hours on this? Yeah. It's not during, it's after.
Okay. So that's a really convenient way for your mind to work, because for me, I'm always doubting things before I even start, or as I'm doing it, I'm only starting to doubt. Like, for example, like with my music, like I created the soundtrack for the Learn to Code RPG, and the whole time I'm like, are people going to just think this is janky? Like, is it going to sound amateurish? And like I was doubting myself the entire time. So I would love to have, it sounds like a superpower to be able to like just power through, and only after you finish working so hard on something do you start to doubt. But the work's already done, so it's like you're not really discourageable once the work is already done. You just have to like, that's a really cool quirk.
But that's different though from the music, because the art, I already know what it needs to look like. I know what the end game is.
Okay, yeah.
The music, you need to be creative and be like, okay, I have to do this, I have to do that. The art is already written for, like, I know, I see it, and I have to make sure it looks like that at the end.
So what is your process like? So you identify some sort of object or some sort of like, maybe you can walk us through.
Usually an electronic.
Yeah. Just walk us through an entire project. Yeah.
Okay. So like I start getting kind of the itch of like, okay, I kind of want to draw something, do creative. Okay. So I start Pinterest. It's already totally geared to like me. So it shows me a bunch of electronics with really nice like edges and stuff that would be easy to draw with CSS art. So I just scroll, open up a bunch of tabs, and then after I have like 10 open, I go through those and I'm like, okay, this one. So then I keep that tab open and I put it as a background image on my code. And then I just kind of outline the shape of it so that I know the main shapes are right. And then after that, I'm off to the races. I start with just any little thing that I think is like the easiest thing to start with. And from there, you just go.
Yeah. And so do you do like the big, like, I mean, when you scroll through your landing page, it shows like the big squares appear first, and then you kind of go through and you add fine details. Maybe you'll zoom in and really focus on like the flash component, and you'll spend a whole lot of time on that. And then you'll go do the viewfinder, and then you'll do like the lens. Like, how do you, because I've seen people draw, like I can't draw with a damn, but like they'll often like, it almost seems arbitrary what they're focused on. Like they just jump around.
It's
almost
arbitrary.
Like, yeah. Is it? So it's just like
Yeah, it's arbitrary for me. It's just whatever looks like that's what I feel like I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna just do that and I'm gonna focus on it. So like I think I did the flash first, or I'm pretty sure it's the flash. I'm not very familiar with camera parts, but the flash part. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make this perfect. And then I'm like, okay, that looks good, but now it's just like squares and a flash, a really nice looking flash. And so then you just move on to the next thing and then the next thing. And then the logo is always the last thing to go on, but
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, how would you recommend somebody if they want to create CSS art like you do? If they want to try to create photorealistic images using CSS, what would be some tips? If somebody, let's say that somebody has like a free weekend and they're like, I want to get better at CSS and I'm going to use this project. I'm going to, you have a photorealistic Xbox controller, right? Like somebody gets they find a photo of an Xbox, or maybe like some new synthesizer module or something like that they just find online, and this is a beautiful, aesthetic piece of hardware, and or their favorite mechanical keyboard or something. They want to recreate that in CSS. What would be your advice to getting started with that process and getting better at CSS art?
Yeah, so my advice would be, for first things first, like try to create something with a single div. Like learn how to stack backgrounds. That's it. Like once you can make like a pretty simple image and you can learn how backgrounds can stack on top of each other, how linear gradients can stack, or radial. After that, it's pretty simple. I don't want to say simple, but like it's tedious, but it's simple. Like it's just very detail oriented. But once you figure out how the gradients work in a background and how positioning works, you're pretty good. It's just starting off, like really what I started off with was just single divs and stacking the backgrounds to make something. Yeah. I think my first one was a window, and I just made the window like shiny, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, what if I add a ledge? Okay, let me stack this background. And then I can move the background and I can make it be just like X height in the same div, and it's a ledge now. Like it's just that moment that you're just like, okay, so that's how you do it. And then, yeah, you're good from there, really. It looks a lot harder than it is, because there's so much code, but it's really not. It's the same properties over and over again, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, are there any projects that you're working on right now? And I mean, you're working full time, you've got like your own personal life and stuff, but like, do you have any projects that you're like, I can't wait to build this? You don't have to spoil what they're going to be, but do you have anything that you're getting ready to start?
Yeah, so I'm working on a CSS course. That's it took a little bit of a break because of the whole burnout thing. Mm-hmm. But I also want to start streaming more code. I'm not sure 100% on how that would work. I want to stream CSS art, but it takes so long to do that. I'm not sure like if that's even a good idea. So like that's kind of running around in my head. If anyone has any ideas on what to do with that, let me know. But definitely I want to do more YouTube videos and articles. I really want to write articles. I never write articles.
Well, we would love to publish some of your articles on the FreeCodeCamp publication, if at some point you're interested in
that would be great. Like a getting started to CSS art article, I think would be solid.
That would be amazing. I'd love to publicize that to the community. One thing, like this is some unsolicited advice. One thing you might consider doing is just keeping your screen recorder going while you're working, and then you have this artifact, like a recording of you building an entire project, and then you could always just speed that up a little bit if it's slow, and then you could have like a 20x speed, because there have been some really cool videos where people are like building UIs and stuff, and they'll be jumping back and forth from their editor to the browser to see what it looks like and stuff, and you could just speed that up and put that with some like copyright free music or some like stream okay music, and you can put that out. That might be a really good way of like testing the water, because live streaming is a commitment. I spent like a year or two streaming on Twitch, and it was so much work compared to like just recording like a asynchronous video and editing it and publishing it. Yeah. So I'm not trying to turn anybody off from streaming, but it's very hard to get people to like actually watch your stream, because they have to be free at that exact moment. They have to be like in a
true.
place where they're like, oh, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch somebody. And at the same time, Twitch has like terrible discoverability. You can stream on YouTube, but people don't really look at YouTube as like, oh, I'm streaming on YouTube. People think of Twitch. And Twitch doesn't really have a category. They've got like just chatting, and they've got like maybe an art category, but they don't really have a category for coding, despite the fact that the developer community has been asking for this forever, right?
Oh, interesting.
And that would make a huge difference in terms of discoverability. So my humble advice to anybody who's considering streaming, like start with YouTube and start with like asynchronously recorded videos where you can edit them and make them more punchy and stuff. It's so much easier to get people to watch a YouTube video that they can watch at any time than to try to get people to tune in at a very specific time to watch you do that. And the fact that you can speed it up, even if it's not that exciting, everything's exciting if you make it fast enough. Right?
I agree. I need to watch everything faster, listen to everything faster. Like, yeah.
So anyway, I apologize for the unsolicited advice, but I hope that's helpful.
No, that's helpful.
If that saves you
that is
10 or 15 hours of streaming to basically one or two people, which is what everybody starts with stream, unless you're like some
which
celebrity.
Is what I was going to do.
Yeah. Even if you have a big Twitter following, that's not necessarily going to translate to a whole lot of people tuning in to watch you on Twitch. I mean, you may have better luck with it than I did, but so you're also developing this course that's going to teach people how to, like, is it just a general CSS course, or is it focused specifically on CSS art?
It's a CSS course focused on CSS art. So it's just going to teach you it's going to teach you CSS, but with the twist of like while you're creating CSS art, because I know sometimes when I'm like learning CSS, like they show you things and you're like, oh, well, I don't need to know that right now. You know, I'm project-based learning pretty much, like, okay, well, do this, you know? And so like you have to like make a keyboard and you have to use grid, things like that. Like just, learn CSS for people that are more like art inclined.
Yeah. What are your longer term goals? I mean, you've got so much momentum, and I mean, you literally have cssartist.com, a great domain name, and you've really like built a niche for yourself as somebody who is exceptionally good at this. Where do you have anything, like any goals like 5-10 years out? I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, where would you ultimately like to be going? Do you see yourself doing agency work indefinitely? Like what does the future hold?
That's a great question.
Kass Moreno?
No, I think agency life is it. Like, I think I just want to keep getting better at what I do, get faster. You know, that's pretty much my goal. I don't want to be a CEO of anything. I don't want to own my own company. Like, I just want to build fun projects forever and like keep learning how to build cool stuff forever. I want to learn 3D rendering. I want to retake Bruno Simon's 3JS course because I think that's so cool. I just want to, like, that's it, really. Just get way better at everything. And that's what I try to do every day, just little by little. That's it. My goal is just be a little bit better.
Yeah. And I would absolutely leave it there. But let's talk about 3JS because it's so amazing. It's such a cool tool for building like 3D, potentially interactive experiences in the browser. Yeah. What drew you to 3JS? And maybe you could describe what it does.
So, I mean, 3JS is really just, as someone who likes to look at art and likes realistic things and stuff, 3JS, what drew me to it was, you know, realistic, actual like 3D things on your computer. Right now, everything is like 2D, or is it? It's
it's 2D.
One-dimensional.
Two-dimensional. Yeah, one-dimensional is just like a single line.
There you go.
Technically,
it's
nothing is one-dimensional, I don't think. Not anything physical.
Okay.
Some physicists will probably correct me there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Although, I'm gonna do a shout out to one-dimensional Pac-Man. It's Pac-Man, but it's a line, and you can. It'll be hard to describe it, but I'm gonna add a link to one-dimensional Pac-Man in the show notes. And if you click this link, you are gonna waste at least 10 minutes on this thing. This game is it's amazing. It's an engineering like design marvel that it works and is as addictive as it is. All you do is you tap to turn Pac-Man around, and he's either running from the ghost or he's running towards the ghost after he ate a power pellet. Such an amazing game.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah. But that is like, to my knowledge, the first one-dimensional game. I mean, it's not technically one, but the entire gameplay takes place on a line.
That's cool.
So 2-dimensional, 3JS, back to 3JS. It's 2-dimensional. All the CD, even though they have perceived depth to them, it's still just a 2-dimensional thing. You can't like grab, the Polaroid camera and start looking at it from different angles and stuff using CSS. I mean,
Right.
you might be able to build 3D stuff in CSS, but Three.js is designed specifically for 3D rendering and like being able to model things and manipulate things in 3 dimensions, right?
Yes, right. So it looks very cool. Like it brings, I don't know, it makes the web so much more exciting, and I want to get in on that, right? Like you want to learn all of that. I've been learning Blender, and I want to learn how to make animated videos on that. I don't know, everything 3JS, 3D and stuff is just like the coolest thing ever for me right now, and it is what I'm into. And I've already taken most of Bruno's course, Bruno Simon's 3JS Journey.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, incredible course. I recommend it to everybody.
Okay, I'll link to it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it's so exciting. Like the whole thing, like the things that you can do with your code on like using 3JS is incredible. And I want to be that cool.
What's the most impressive thing you've seen with 3JS?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to sound like a commercial, but Bruno Simon's portfolio website.
Is that the one where you're driving the remote control around?
Yes.
That is amazing.
Well,
I love that. You're driving like this RC car around and like knocking over bowling pins and stuff. Okay, I'm definitely, I'll link to that instead of his course. I think that page links to his course. But, along with One Dimensional Pac-Man, everybody listening, you should spend like 5 minutes just driving. This is the best portfolio I've ever seen.
It's the coolest thing ever. Yeah.
I mean, your portfolio is amazing. I would put, like, if there was a tier list, yours would be, like, probably S tier, but his is, like, SS tier. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, his is everything.
Yeah.
His is creative. It's, like, you're like, how did he do this? It's everything I admire in web. Like, it's amazing. Yeah. Really. So, yeah, that's what I want to do.
I just wanted to comment that it's, like, so cool that, like, you went from architecture student kind of like down and out, and then now you're this widely recognized like popular kind of like artist. Like you're creating art in a time when it's very hard to break through as an artist. Like it's like probably the hardest field to ever go into is creating art, right? Yeah. And you're doing it, and people are checking out your work, and you've also been able to parlay those same skills that you've been doing to develop this art into working as a software engineer, as a senior front-end developer at a consultancy, at a design agency. I mean, that's so cool that you've been able to like take a second chapter, turn over a new leaf, and go in a completely different direction and find so much success there. And I mean, like, what does that feel like?
Insane. I feel like I've lived 2 different lives, right? Like if you would have asked me 10 years ago where I would be now, I don't know what I would have told you, but it would not be this. Like, It's cool, and it makes you feel like, you really can do anything. Like, just, you're capable of so much more than you think you are all the time. It's crazy, right? Like, it's just, don't be complacent. Like, it's insane, really. It feels great. Like, it's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a blast talking with you. Like, Kass, you're just like such an enthusiastic, like, high energy person. It's very hard for me to imagine you as an introvert who would work on an engineering problem for an entire week because she's too timid to ask for help. But I mean, obviously you've come an incredibly long way, and I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast and inspiring me and inspiring the many people who are looking to get into software development, who needed you as a role model and have now found you as a role model.
Thank you so much. Honestly, hearing that from you is everything. And I cannot wait to tell my mom. Like, she's going to die.
Well, if she's listening to this, what's your mom's name?
Rosie.
Rosie, from the FreeCodeCamp community, I hope you have a fantastic day, and your daughter is amazing.
She's going to love that. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Well, everyone, again, check out the many links in the show notes to the many projects we've talked about. Check out Kass's portfolio, of course. Check out the Bruno Simon's amazing portfolio as well. And I hope everybody walks away with a little bit more inspiration, a little bit more knowledge about, CSS, HTML, front-end development, agency life, all these things that we've talked about. Thank you again for coming on, Kass.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really. And can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Okay, if y'all are stuck on something or anything CSS, you want to talk your portfolio, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to hang out, talk things through. That's all.
Awesome. You're such a chill person for like being so helpful and like, sending the elevator back down as Leon Noel from 100 Devs likes to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so chill. So everyone, until next week, happy coding.
Bye.